The space station floated quietly in the darkness between stars. Its metal walls gleamed under the soft lights that lined every corridor. This was Harmony Hub, the most important meeting place in the galaxy. Today, something special was happening. Here, Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the long hallway. His blue uniform was clean and pressed. Behind him came Dr. Lisa Chong, a woman who studied alien life forms. Next to her walked Colonel Ryan Torres, a man who knew everything about war and fighting. They were the human team for today's big meeting. Jake felt nervous but excited. This was the first time humans would meet with two of the most powerful alien races in the galaxy. The meeting could change everything. It could bring peace, or it could bring war. Everything depended on how well they understood each other. They reached the main meeting room. The doors opened with a soft sound. Inside, the room was huge. A large round table sat in the center. Strange alien technology covered the walls. Lights blinked in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at two alien beings waited at the table. The first one was tall and thin. Its skin looked like gray leather. It had 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow. This was General Zixthara of the Velthari Empire. The Velthari were known across the galaxy for being very careful about everything. The second alien looked completely different. It was made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through its body in waves of blue and green. This was Commander Kithros of the Nexari Collective. The Nexari were famous for their perfect logic and cold thinking. Jake stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. Thank you for meeting with us today. We hope this can be the start of good relations between our peoples. General Zixthara's 4 arms moved in a pattern that meant respect in his culture. We are curious about your species, Admiral Morrison. Your people have surprised us many times. You fight differently than anyone else we know. Commander Kithros made a sound like wind chimes. This was how his people spoke. A machine on the table turned his words into human language. Your military tactics are most unusual. You take risks that would destroy any other species, yet you survive and win battles. We do not understand how. Dr. Chong sat down at the table. Perhaps we can learn from each other. We would like to know more about your cultures, too. The meeting began with formal talks. They discussed trade routes and defense treaties. They talked about sharing technology and protecting each other from common enemies. The aliens seemed impressed by human engineering. They liked how humans could build things quickly and fix problems fast, but there were things that puzzled them. General Zixthara spoke about human battle reports. Your soldiers often choose dangerous paths when safe ones exist. They volunteer for missions that will likely kill them. This makes no sense, too. U.S. Colonel Torres smiled. Humans believe that sometimes you must risk everything to protect what matters most. We don't like danger, but we don't let fear stop us from doing what's right. Commander Kithros made his chime sound again. This is what we do not understand. Fear exists to keep us alive. Why do humans ignore this basic survival instinct? Dr. Chong had an idea. Maybe we should look at how our different species raise their young. Children show us the true nature of any culture. If you want to understand why humans act the way they do, watch how we teach our children. The aliens looked interested. General Zixthara's yellow eyes glowed brighter. Yes, this could be very helpful. Our young ones are kept completely safe until they reach full maturity. We have not lost a single child in 10,000 years of recorded history. Commander Kithros agreed. Our offspring remain in protective stasis chambers until they are ready to face the world. They emerge as adults with full knowledge downloaded into their minds. They never experience danger or pain during development. Jake felt a small worry in his stomach. Human children were very different from what these aliens described, but he wanted to build trust with these new allies. We would be happy to show. you how human children live and learn. But I should warn you, our ways might seem strange to you." The aliens dismissed his warning with gestures of confidence. They had seen human military tactics and survived. How different could human children be? Dr. Chung set up a video connection to Earth. The signal would travel through space to show them a human school in real time. "We'll connect to a place where children go to learn. It's called Lincoln Elementary School." As the connection was being made, the aliens talked about their own young. General Zixthara explained that Velthari children lived in special safe rooms until age 50. They learned everything through computer programs. They never touched anything that could hurt them. Commander Kithros described how Nixari young slept in crystal pods for 30 years. During this time, all knowledge was placed directly into their minds. When they woke up, they were fully grown and ready to work. The video screen flickered to life. On it, they could see a building on Earth. It was a bright, sunny day. Children's voices could be heard in the background, laughing and shouting. "This is Lincoln Elementary School in Colorado," Dr. Chong explained. "The children here are between 5 and 12 years old. Right now, they're having what we call recess time. It's when they play and have fun." The aliens leaned forward to watch. They expected to see something similar to their own carefully controlled environments. They thought they would see human children sitting quietly, learning safely, protected from any possible harm. Instead, they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of humans forever. The school bell rang through the speakers. Suddenly, doors burst open and dozens of small human beings poured out into an open area. They were running and screaming with joy. They scattered in all directions, like water flowing from a broken dam. General Zixthara's 4 arms began to shake. Commander Kithro's sistral body started flashing warning colors. What they were seeing looked like chaos. It looked like madness. But to the humans in the room, it looked like a perfectly normal day at school. "Oh no," Jake whispered to himself. He realized he should have prepared the aliens much better for what they were about to see. The real shock was just beginning. The video screen showed chaos. At least, that's what it looked like to the alien generals. Children were running everywhere. They were screaming and laughing. To General Zixthara and Commander Kithros, it looked like a disaster was happening. "Are they under attack?" General Zixthara asked. His yellow eyes were wide with fear. "Should we send help?" Dr. Chang smiled gently. "No, they're just playing. This is normal for human children." On the screen, a small boy named Danny Rodriguez was climbing up a tall metal structure. It had bars and platforms, like a jungle gym. The boy was only 6 years old, but he was climbing higher and higher. Soon he was 20 feet off the ground. Commander Kithro's crystal body flashed bright red. This was a danger signal among his people. That small human is going to fall. Why is no one stopping him? "He's fine," Colonel Torres said. "Children climb things. It helps them grow strong." But the aliens were not convinced. They watched as Danny reached the top of the jungle gym. He was so high up that he could see over the school building. The boy smiled and waved at other children below. Then he started to climb across to another part of the structure. General Zixthara made a sound like a dying animal. In his culture, no child would ever be allowed to climb even 3 feet off the ground. Yet this tiny human was playing at a height that would terrify most adult Velthari. The camera moved to show another part of the playground. A girl named Emma Johnson was swinging on metal bars. She was using only her hands to move from bar to bar. She was 8 years old and hung 15 feet above the ground. If she let go, she would fall and get hurt. "This is insane," Commander Kithros said. His voice made sounds like breaking glass. "How do any human children survive to adulthood?" Dr. Chang tried to explain. Children are actually very good at this. They practice and get better. Their bodies are designed to handle these activities. But the aliens were watching something even more shocking. A group of 10-year-old children were playing a game called tag. One child would chase the others and try to touch them. The child who was touched would then become the chaser. This might sound simple, but the aliens saw it differently. They watched as Alex Thompson ran as fast as he could across the playground. He was chasing a girl named Katie Bell. Both children were running at full speed. They were not looking where they were going. They could crash into something at any moment. They're going to collide. General Zixthara shouted. He stood up from his chair. They're going to hurt each other. But the children did not crash. Alex caught Katie and gently touched her shoulder. Both children laughed. Katie then began chasing other children. The game continued with no one getting hurt. The aliens could not understand this. In their minds, running at full speed without looking was a sure way to die. Yet these human children did it for fun. The video showed more shocking sights. Children were going down a long metal slide. They sat on the slide and pushed themselves down. The slide was steep and fast. The children went so fast that they flew through the air for a few seconds at the bottom. Commander Kithros began calculating. The velocity at the bottom of that slide is approximately 15 miles per hour. The children become airborne for 1.2 seconds. The impact when they land could break bones. But look, Dr. Chong pointed at the screen. They're all laughing. They're having fun. No one is getting hurt. It was true. Child after child went down the slide. They all landed safely at the bottom. They all got up and ran to do it again. What the aliens saw as a death trap, the children saw as entertainment. The playground had other scary things too. There were seesaws where children sat on opposite ends of a longboard. One child would push off the ground and launch the other child into the air. The aliens watched as 7-year-old Marcus Williams flew 3 feet up in the air, then came crashing down. He's going to be crushed. General Zixthara cried, but Marcus was not crushed. He laughed and pushed off the ground to launch his friend into the air. The game continued with both children enjoying themselves. There were swings, where children sat on seats attached to long chains. They would push themselves back and forth, going higher and higher. Some children went so high that they were almost horizontal in the air. The aliens calculated that if a child fell from that height, they would be seriously injured. But no children fell. They all held on tight and enjoyed the feeling of flying through the air. The aliens watched in horror as a group of children played dodgeball. In this game, children threw rubber balls at each other. If you got hit by a ball, you were out of the game. The children threw the balls as hard as they could at each other. They're using projectile weapons. Commander Kithros exclaimed. They're deliberately trying to hurt each other. It's just a game, Colonel Torres said. The balls are soft. They don't really hurt, but the aliens did not understand. They watched as 9-year-old Lucy Adams threw a ball at 10-year-old Sam Parker. The ball hit Sam in the stomach. Sam bent over for a moment, then stood up and walked to the side of the game area. He was smiling to the aliens. This looked like warfare training. They were teaching children to attack each other with weapons. They were teaching them to accept being hit without showing pain. Another group of children was playing Red Rover. They formed 2 lines facing each other. They held hands tightly, and one line would call a child from the other line. That child would run as fast as possible and try to break through the line of children. The aliens watched as 8-year-old Tyler Brooks ran full speed at a line of 6 children. He hit the line with his whole body. The children in the line tried to hold on, but Tyler broke through. Everyone fell down in a pile. They're practicing combat techniques, General Zixthara said. They're learning to break enemy lines. The human adults in the room looked at each other. They had never thought of children's games this way, but they could see how it might look to aliens who kept their children completely safe. The playground had monkey bars where children swung from bar to bar, using only their hands. It had spinning merry-go-rounds where children sat and spun around until they were dizzy. It had climbing walls where children used ropes and handholds to climb up tall surfaces. Everything on the playground seemed designed to put children in danger, yet the children loved it. They laughed and played and had fun. They helped each other and took turns. When someone got a small scrape or bruise, they just kept playing. The aliens were beginning to understand something important. These human children were not just playing games. They were learning to be brave. They were learning to take risks. They were learning to push their limits and overcome fear. No wonder human soldiers were so fearless in battle. They had been training for it since they were tiny children. Principal Karen White appeared on the video screen. She was a kind woman who had been watching the children play. "Is everything okay with your video call?" she asked Dr. Chong. "Everything is fine," Dr. Chong replied. "Our friends are just very interested in how human children play." Principal White smiled. "Oh, they should see our sports teams then. The children are even more active during organized sports." General Zixthara and Commander Kithros looked at each other with terror. If this was how human children played normally, what did their organized sports look like? They were about to find out. The video screen changed to show a different place. This was a baseball field behind the school. Children in colorful uniforms were running around on a large grass area. They had wooden sticks in their hands and were wearing strange caps on their heads. "This is our Little League baseball team," Principal White explained through the speaker. "The children are 9 years old. They're playing against another school team." General Zixthara's forearms began to shake again. Commander Kithros's crystal body flashed yellow warning lights. What they saw on the screen looked like a war zone. A small boy named Lucas Davis stood on a raised dirt mound in the center of the field. He was holding a white ball in his hand. About 60 feet away from him, a girl named Maya Patel stood holding a long wooden stick. She was waiting for Lucas to throw the ball at her. "Why is he throwing a projectile at her?" Commander Kithros asked. His voice sounded like scared wind chimes. "This is clearly an attack," Dr. Chong tried to explain. "It's called baseball. Lucas is the pitcher. Maya is the batter. She's going to try to hit the ball with her bat. Hit the projectile while it's flying at her." General Zixthara could not believe what he was hearing. "This is suicide training." On the screen, Lucas wound up his arm and threw the ball as hard as he could. The ball flew through the air at about 40 miles per hour. Maya swung her wooden bat and missed. The ball flew past her head, missing by only a few inches. Both aliens made sounds of terror. If that ball had hit Maya in the head, it could have seriously hurt her. Yet she just smiled and got ready for the next throw. Children get hit by baseballs. Sometimes, Colonel Torres admitted, but they wear protective gear, and they learn to watch the ball carefully. Sometimes they get hit. General Zixthara's yellow eyes grew even wider. "You allow children to be hit by high-speed projectiles?" The game continued. Lucas threw another ball. This time, Maya swung her bat and hit the ball hard. The ball flew high into the air toward other children standing in the field. A 10-year-old boy named Jake Collins ran to catch the ball. He held up a leather glove and let the ball smash into it. Commander Kithros quickly calculated the force of the impact. That ball hit his glove with the force of a small hammer blow. "How is his hand not broken?" "Practice," Dr. Chong said simply. "Children start playing this game when they're very young." They learn how to catch safely. But the aliens were watching something even more shocking. Maya had started running around a field after hitting the ball. She was running to different white squares on the ground. Other children were trying to catch the ball and throw it to stop her. A 12-year-old girl named Sophie Martinez was standing near one of the white squares. She was holding her glove out, waiting for her teammate to throw her the ball. Maya was running straight toward her as fast as she could. "They're going to collide," General Zixtara shouted. He covered his eyes with two of his arms, but Maya slid on the ground just before reaching Sophie. She slid feet first into the white square, which was called a base. Sophie caught the ball and tried to touch Maya with it, but Maya was safe. The aliens watched this happen several times. Children would hit balls and run around the field. Other children would try to catch the balls and throw them to stop the runners. Sometimes the runners would slide into the bases. Sometimes they would collide with other players. "This is organized warfare," Commander Kithros declared. "They're teaching children to attack and defend using projectile weapons." The video screen changed again. Now it showed a different sport. This was a soccer field where children were chasing a black and white ball. They were trying to kick the ball into large nets at each end of the field. 9-year-old Tyler Brooks was running with the ball. He was using his feet to control it while running at full speed. Other children were chasing him, trying to take the ball away. Tyler kicked the ball toward the goal as hard as he could. Standing in front of the goal was a 10-year-old girl named Sophie Martinez. She was the goalkeeper. When she saw the ball flying toward her, she threw her entire body in front of it. The ball hit her in the chest and knocked her backward. She deliberately put herself in the path of the projectile. General Zixtara cried. She could have been killed. "It's just a soccer ball," Colonel Torres said. "It's not that dangerous." But to the aliens, it was very dangerous. They calculated that the ball was moving at 25 miles per hour and weighed 1 pound. In their understanding, any object moving that fast was a weapon that could cause serious injury. Sophie got up from the ground and picked up the ball. She threw it to another player on her team. The game continued with children running and kicking and throwing their bodies in front of the ball. The aliens watched as children deliberately crashed into each other trying to get the ball. They saw kids fall down and get back up. They watched as children kicked the ball so hard that it flew through the air like a cannonball. "This is insane," Commander Kithros said. "How do any of these children survive?" But the worst was yet to come. The video screen changed one more time. Now it showed the most shocking sport of all. This was American football, and it looked like pure warfare to the alien generals. 12-year-old quarterback Ben Carter stood behind a line of his teammates. Across from them, another line of children was crouched down, ready to attack. Ben was holding an oval-shaped ball in his hands. "What are they doing?" General Zixtara asked in a whisper. "This is football," Dr. Chang explained. "Ben is going to throw the ball to one of his teammates. The other team is going to try to stop him." A whistle blew. Suddenly, the two lines of children crashed into each other. They pushed and shoved and wrestled. Ben threw the ball to a boy named Noah Adams, who was running down the field. Noah caught the ball and kept running. A girl named Grace Wilson from the other team was chasing him. She caught up to Noah and tackled him. Both children fell to the ground hard. The aliens could not speak. They watched as children deliberately collided with each other at full speed. They saw kids pile on top of each other. They watched as children threw themselves at other children with no thought for their safety. "This is not sport," Commander Kithros whispered. "This is combat training. They're teaching children to fight." General Zixtara agreed. They're preparing them for war from a very young age. The human adults in the room looked at each other uncomfortably. They had never thought about children's sports this way, but they could see how it might look to aliens who kept their young completely safe. On the screen, the football game continued. Children crashed into each other again and again. They fell down and got back up. They pushed and shoved and fought for the ball. Sometimes they got small injuries, but they just kept playing. The aliens began to understand something important. These human children were not just playing games. They were learning to be warriors. They were learning to take hits and keep fighting. They were learning to work as a team under pressure. Every sport seemed designed to teach children how to handle danger. Baseball taught them to dodge fast-moving projectiles. Soccer taught them to sacrifice their bodies for the team. Football taught them to fight through pain and keep going. "Now I understand," General Zixthara said quietly. "This is why human soldiers are so fearless. They've been training for battle since they were tiny children." Commander Kithros nodded. His crystal head. They don't just accept danger. They seek it out. They compete to see who can handle the most risk. Dr. Chung smiled. Children love challenges. They want to test themselves and see what they can do. But the aliens were still horrified. They watched as more children played different sports. They saw basketball, where children jumped high in the air and crashed into each other. They saw tennis, where children hit balls at each other with rackets. Every human sport seemed to involve some form of controlled violence or dangerous activity. Yet the children loved it. They laughed and cheered and had fun. They helped their teammates and showed good sportsmanship. The aliens were beginning to realize that they had seriously underestimated human military capabilities. These weren't just soldiers who happened to be brave. These were people who had been systematically trained to embrace danger from the moment they could walk. Colonel Torres decided to make things even more interesting. "Would you like to see what our teenagers do for fun?" he asked with a smile. The aliens looked at each other with terror. If this was how human children played, what did their teenagers do? They were about to find out, and it would shock them even more. Colonel Torres smiled as he set up a new video connection. "Since you're so interested in how humans develop, let me show you our teenage adventure camps. These are for children aged 14 to 17. Dr. Chung tried to give him a warning. Look, but it was too late. The colonel had already connected to Camp Wilderness in the Rocky Mountains. The aliens leaned forward to watch, not knowing they were about to witness something that would give them nightmares for years. The video screen showed a beautiful mountain landscape. Tall pine trees covered the hillsides. A rushing river flowed through the valley. It looked peaceful and safe. The aliens relaxed a little. Then they saw the teenagers. 16-year-old Counselor Jake Sullivan was standing at the bottom of a massive rock cliff. Next to him was a 14-year-old girl named Mia Foster. She was wearing a helmet and had ropes attached to her body. She was looking up at the cliff face, which rose 50 feet straight up into the sky. "What is she doing?" General Zixthara asked nervously. "Rock climbing," Colonel Torres replied. "It's a popular activity for teenagers." Commander Kithros's crystal body began flashing red warning lights. "She's going to climb up that vertical rock face? With no protection except rope? The rope will catch her if she falls," Dr. Chong explained. But the aliens watched in horror as Mia began climbing. She grabbed onto tiny cracks in the rock with her fingers. She found small ledges to put her feet on. Slowly, she climbed higher and higher up the cliff face. "One mistake and she'll fall 50 feet, General Zixthara cried. "The rope might break. She could die." Mia kept climbing. Sometimes she would pause to rest, hanging from the rock face by just her fingertips. Sometimes she would reach for a handhold and miss, slipping a few inches before catching herself. The aliens made sounds of terror every time she moved. Halfway up the cliff, Mia encountered a difficult section. The rock was smooth with very few handholds. She had to stretch her body across the rock face, supporting her weight with just her fingers and toes. One wrong move would send her falling. This is madness. Commander Kithros exclaimed. Why would anyone voluntarily put themselves in such danger? For the challenge, Colonel Torres said, and for the feeling of accomplishment when you reach the top. The aliens could not understand this. Their species avoided all unnecessary risks. The idea of deliberately putting yourself in mortal danger for fun was completely foreign to them. Mia reached the top of the cliff. She stood up and raised her arms in victory. Far below, other teenagers cheered and clapped. The aliens watched as she rappelled back down the cliff face, sliding down the rope in controlled jumps. She's falling, General Zixthara shouted. She's rappelling, Dr. Chong corrected. It's a controlled descent technique. But the aliens were already watching something even more terrifying. The video feed had switched to show a river where teenagers were engaged in an activity called whitewater rafting. 14-year-old Nathan Reed and 15-year-old Chloe Peterson were sitting in a small inflatable boat, holding paddles. The river was wild and dangerous. White foam shot up from the rocks. The water moved so fast that it looked like a liquid avalanche. The teenagers were deliberately putting their boat into the most dangerous parts of the river. They're going to be swept away, Commander Kithros cried. The current will smash them against the rocks. The aliens watched as the teenagers' boat hit a wall of white water. The boat bounced and spun. Water crashed over the teenagers, soaking them completely. For a moment, it looked like they might be thrown out of the boat, but Nathan and Chloe were experts. They used their paddles to steer through the dangerous water. They leaned their bodies to keep the boat balanced. They worked together as a team to navigate through the rapids. They're enjoying this, General Zixthara said in disbelief. They're laughing while in mortal danger. It was true. The teenagers were having the time of their lives. They whooped and cheered as they rode the wild water. They deliberately steered toward the biggest waves and the most dangerous rapids. The video feed changed again. Now it showed a group of 15-year-olds in a forest. They were participating in survival training led by outdoor instructor Connor Mischel. The teenagers had been dropped off in the wilderness with minimal supplies. They had to build shelters, find food, and survive on their own. They've abandoned their young in a dangerous environment, Commander Kithros observed. This is child abandonment. It's survival training, Colonel Torres explained. They're learning valuable skills. The aliens watched as the teenagers built shelters from branches and leaves. They made fires by rubbing sticks together. They searched for edible plants and tried to catch fish in the stream. Everything they did was difficult and potentially dangerous. 15-year-old Sam Rodriguez was trying to start a fire. He was using a bow drill, spinning a stick against a piece of wood to create heat. His hands were getting blistered from the work. Sparks flew dangerously close to his face. He's going to burn himself, General Zixthara exclaimed. But Sam successfully started his fire. He smiled with pride as the flames grew. Other teenagers gathered around to warm themselves and cook their food. They had successfully completed a task that would challenge most. Adult aliens. The video feed showed even more shocking activities. 17-year-old Ashley Torres was walking across a thin cable suspended 40 feet above the ground. She was on what humans called a ropes course. She had to rely only on her balance and courage to cross the cable. She's going to fall. The aliens cried together, but Ashley made it across safely. She had trained for this. She knew how to keep her balance and control her fear. When she reached the other side, she pumped her fist in victory. The aliens watched. Teenagers doing zip lines, where they slid down cables at high speed through the forest. They saw kids rock climbing without ropes, using only their hands and feet to climb up cliff faces. They watched as teenagers participated in paintball games, where they hunted each other through the woods with projectile weapons. This is military training, Commander Kithros said. They're preparing these teenagers for warfare. The paintball game was particularly shocking to the aliens. 16-year-old Marcus Collins was crouched behind a tree, holding a weapon that shot paint-filled pellets. He was hunting 17-year-old Sarah Kim, who was hiding somewhere in the forest. Marcus moved carefully through the trees. He checked every shadow and listened for any sound. When he spotted Sarah, he aimed his weapon and fired. The paint pellet hit Sarah in the shoulder, marking her as eliminated from the game. They're teaching children to hunt each other, General Zixthara whispered. They're training them to be predators. But the teenagers were having fun. They laughed and joked even when they got hit. They complimented each other on good shots and clever hiding spots. It was a game to them, but the aliens saw it as warfare training. The video feed showed more activities. Teenagers were bungee jumping, throwing themselves off high bridges with only elastic cords to save them. They were skydiving, jumping out of airplanes, and trusting their lives to parachutes. They were mountain biking down steep trails at dangerous speeds. Every activity seemed designed to push teenagers to their limits. They were learning to overcome fear, to trust their skills, and to work as teams under pressure. They were being systematically prepared for any challenge life might throw at them. Now I understand human military success, General Zixthara said quietly. By the time your people reach adulthood, they've already faced more danger than most of our species encounter in their entire lives. Commander Kithros nodded his crystal head. They don't just tolerate risk. They actively seek it out. They compete to see who can handle the most danger. Dr. Chong smiled. Humans believe that facing challenges makes us stronger. We think that overcoming fear and pushing our limits helps us grow as people. The aliens were beginning to understand something profound about human nature. Most species in the galaxy evolved to avoid danger. They developed careful, cautious behaviors that kept them safe. But humans were different. They had evolved to face danger head-on. This wasn't just cultural. It was biological. Humans got a chemical reward in their brains when they overcame challenges. They actually felt good when they pushed their limits and survived dangerous situations. Your species is unique, Commander Kithros said. You've turned danger into entertainment. Colonel Torres nodded. We believe that a life without risk is not worth living. We want to see what we're capable of. The aliens sat in stunned silence. They were finally beginning to understand why humans were such formidable opponents in any conflict. It wasn't just their technology or their tactics. It was their fundamental nature. While other species spent their childhoods learning to avoid danger, humans spent theirs learning to conquer it. By the time they became adults, they had already been tested in ways that would terrify most alien species. The video connection ended, but the aliens continued to stare at the blank screen. They were processing what they had learned about human nature. They were beginning to realize that they had seriously underestimated this species. Admiral Jake Morrison looked at his alien guests. Is there anything else you'd like to know about human development? The aliens looked at each other with expressions of shock and newfound respect. They had come to this meeting thinking they understood. The meeting room fell silent. The video screens went dark. The only sounds were the soft hum of the space station's life support systems and the gentle breathing of the humans. General Zixthara sat perfectly still, his forearms folded across his chest. Commander Kithros's crystal body had stopped flashing. Instead, it pulsed with a slow, steady blue light that meant deep thinking among his people. Admiral Jake Morrison waited patiently. He could see that the aliens were processing everything they had witnessed. Dr. Lisa Chung folded her hands on the table. Colonel Ryan Torres leaned back in his chair, trying to look relaxed. All three humans knew that this moment would determine the future relationship between their species. Minutes passed. Finally, General Zixthara lifted his head. His yellow eyes looked directly at Admiral Morrison. When he spoke, his voice was different. It was filled with something the humans had never heard from him before. It was respect mixed with fear. "Admiral Morrison," he said slowly, "my people have been warriors for thousands of years. We have conquered many worlds. We have defeated enemies that other species could not even fight. But after seeing what we have seen today, I must tell you something important." He paused and looked at his companion. Commander Kithros made a sound like wind chimes agreeing with him. "We have been thinking about humans all wrong," General Zixthara continued. "We thought you were just another species that happened to be good at fighting. We thought your success in battles came from better weapons or clever tactics. We were completely wrong." Dr. Chong leaned forward. "What do you mean?" General Zixthara's forearms moved in a gesture that meant amazement in his culture. "Your success comes from something much more fundamental. You don't just train soldiers to be brave. You raise children to be fearless from birth." Commander Kithros spoke up. His crystal body flashed with colors of understanding. "My people have studied warfare for centuries. We know about weapons and strategy and tactics. But we never understood the most important factor in any battle. We never understood the mind of the warrior." He paused, then continued. "Most species in the galaxy, including ours, see danger as something to avoid. Our children are raised to be careful, to think before acting, to choose the safest path. This makes us good at planning and technology, but it makes us weak in actual combat." Admiral Morrison nodded. "And humans are different. Completely different," General Zixthara said. "Human children actively seek out danger. They play games that would terrify our adults. They participate in sports that look like warfare training. They volunteer for activities that could kill them." Colonel Torres smiled. "We call it building character." "You call it building character," Commander Kithros said. "We would call it systematic conditioning for warfare. By the time a human reaches military age, they have already experienced more danger and overcome more fear than most of our species face in their entire lives." The aliens were beginning to understand the true source of human military effectiveness. It wasn't superior technology, though humans were certainly innovative. It wasn't better strategy, though human tactics were often unpredictable. It was something much more basic. "Your soldiers don't just tolerate danger," General Zixthara explained. "They embrace it. They compete to see who can take the biggest risks. They volunteer for the most dangerous missions. This is not normal behavior for any species we know." Dr. Chong tried to explain. "Humans believe that facing challenges makes you as stronger. We think that overcoming difficult situations helps us grow as people." "That is exactly the point," Commander Kithros said. "Most species grow stronger by avoiding challenges. We become wise by learning from the mistakes of others. We survive by being careful and cautious. But humans do the opposite." The aliens had spent the morning watching human children engage in activities that would be considered child abuse in their cultures. They had seen teenagers voluntarily risk their lives for entertainment. They had witnessed systematic training in risk-taking and danger management. "When we first met humans in battle," General Zixthara said, "we could not understand why your soldiers acted so strangely. They would charge into situations where death was almost certain. They would volunteer for missions that had no chance of success. We thought they were either insane or desperate. But now we understand," Commander Kithros added. They were not insane or desperate. They were doing what they had been trained to do since childhood. They were seeking out the biggest challenge and trying to overcome it. The humans looked at each other. They had never thought about their culture this way. To them, encouraging children to take risks and face challenges was just normal parenting. They wanted their kids to be confident and capable. "There's something else we need to understand," General Zixthara said. "How do so many human children survive to adulthood? With all this dangerous activity, your species should have gone extinct long ago." Colonel Torres laughed. "Human children are tougher than they look, and we do teach them to be careful. We teach them to assess risks and make smart decisions. But we also teach them not to let fear control their lives. This is the key," Dr. Chang added. "We don't just throw children into danger randomly. We gradually expose them to controlled risks. We teach them to handle bigger and bigger challenges as they grow older." Commander Kithrose's crystal body flashed. "With understanding, you have created a systematic training program that spans the entire childhood. Each activity builds on the previous one. Each challenge prepares them for the next level of difficulty. By the time they become adults, General," Zixthara said, "they have been thoroughly tested. They know their capabilities. They have learned to function under pressure. They have developed the mental strength to face any situation." The aliens were beginning to see human child-rearing as the most sophisticated military training program in the galaxy. Other species trained their soldiers for a few years before sending them into battle. Humans trained their soldiers for their entire childhood. "Now we understand why human soldiers are so unpredictable," Commander Kithros said. "They don't follow the normal rules of engagement. They don't retreat when they should. They don't surrender when defeat is certain. Because to them, it's just another challenge to overcome," General Zixthara added. "They have been facing impossible situations since they were children. What looks like certain death to us looks like an interesting problem to them." Admiral Morrison felt a mixture of pride and concern. He was proud of his species and their capabilities, but he was also worried about what the aliens might do with this knowledge. "What will you tell your governments about this?" he asked. The two aliens looked at each other. They seemed to be communicating without words, the way long-time allies do. "We will tell them the truth," General Zixthara said finally. "We will tell them that humans are not just another warrior species. They are something unique in the galaxy. They are a species that has evolved to thrive on danger. We will recommend extreme caution in any future dealings with humanity," Commander Kithros added. "Not because humans are evil or aggressive, but because they are fundamentally different from any species we have encountered." "Different how?" Dr. Chang asked. "Most species fight to survive," General Zixthara explained. "Humans fight to live. There is a big difference. When we fight, we are trying to eliminate a threat so we can return to safety. When humans fight, they are doing what comes naturally to them." Commander Kithros nodded. "This makes humans both more dangerous and more predictable than we thought. More dangerous because they will never surrender or give up. More predictable because they will always choose the most challenging path." The meeting was coming to an end, but the aliens had one more question. "Admiral Morrison," General Zixthara said, "we have shown you our greatest weakness today. We have revealed that our species are not suited for the kind of warfare that humans excel at. In return, we would like to ask you something." "What would you like to know?" "Are there other human activities that we should be aware of? Other ways that your people prepare for danger?" Colonel Torres smiled and looked at Admiral Morrison. "Should we tell them about driving lessons?" Admiral Morrison shook his head quickly. "I think they've learned enough for one day." But the aliens had heard enough to understand. There were more shocking human activities that they hadn't even seen. Yet, the rabbit hole of human risk-taking behavior went even deeper than they had imagined. Perhaps another time, Dr. Chong said diplomatically. As the meeting ended, the aliens stood to leave. They moved differently than when they had arrived. They moved like beings who had learned something that changed their understanding of the universe. Admiral Morrison, General Zixthara, said as they reached the door, "We came here today thinking we might form a military alliance with humanity. We thought we could be partners in future conflicts. And now?" Admiral Morrison asked. "Now we think it would be much wiser to make sure we never become your enemies," Commander Kithros said simply. The aliens left the meeting room, carrying with them a new understanding of human nature. They would report back to their governments that humanity was unlike any species in the galaxy. They would recommend treaties of friendship and cooperation. They would suggest that any future conflicts with humans be avoided at all costs, because they had